Good afternoon or early evening, everyone. Welcome to Go the F ** K to Sleep, a panel discussion on the translation of profanity. As Beth said, my name is Dale Peck. I'm just going to introduce our panelists, and we'll dive right into it. So immediately to my left is Ricardo Cortés, who has illustrated books about marijuana, electricity, the Jamaican bobsled team, and Chinese food. His work has been featured in the New York Times, Vanity Fair, Entertainment Weekly, New York Magazine, The Village Voice, and on CNN and Fox News. He lives in Brooklyn, New York, where he is working on a book about the history of Coca-Cola and cocaine. You can see his work at www.rmcortes.com. At the far left is Cobina Gillitt, a translator, scholar, and educator who serves on the translation committee of the Pan American Center. She teaches theater studies at the Tisch School of the Arts and is a translator of Indonesian into English. Her most recent work as editor and translator is the Lontar Anthology of Indonesian Drama. Her scholarly work on contemporary Indonesian theater has appeared in Antigone on the Contemporary World Stage, The Senses in Performance, the Asian Theater Journal, the Drama Review, and Theater Survey. She's also contributed to several encyclopedias on Asian theater and contemporary drama, and has been a member of Jakarta-based Mandiri Theater since 1988. And then in the middle is Adam Mansbach, whose novels include The End of the Jews, winner of the California Book Award, and the best-selling Angry Black White Boy, a San Francisco Chronicle Best Book of 2005. His fiction and essays have appeared in the New York Times Book Review, the Believer Granta, the Los Angeles Times, and many other publications. He is a 2010-11 New Voices Professor of Fiction at Rutgers University. So the book we're here to discuss today, Go the Fuck to Sleep, written by Mansbach and illustrated by Cortés, was published by Akashic Books in June 2011. Before it was published, the book had reached #1 on Amazon's bestseller list, and in addition to selling hundreds of thousands of copies, has received praise from the likes of David Byrne, Christina Garcia, A.J. Jacobs, and Jonathan Lethem. It has been turned into an audiobook by Samuel L. Jackson and is being turned into a film by Fox 2000. And also it has been translated into more than 35 languages, including, and I won't read everything I've written down here, I think I got a little ambitious, Afrikaans, Dutch, Danish, Slovenian, Slovakian, Lithuanian, Estonian, Greek, Latvian, French, Spanish, including Latin Spanish, Latin American Spanish, Castellano, North American Spanish, and Basque, German, Polish, Norwegian, New Norwegian, which none of us knew existed before that, Swedish, translated by Adam's wife, Victoria Haigblum, Japanese, Korean, Mandarin, Taiwanese, Turkish, Italian, Hebrew, etc., etc. I only left off Portuguese, Brazilian, but both Portugal Portuguese and Brazilian Portuguese, which we're going to talk about a bit because it was actually censored in the translation. So I wanted to start off actually with a brief history of the word fuck, just for those of you who might not be familiar with it. The word fuck is first recognized in modern English, spelled both F-U-C-K and F-U-K, as a derivative of the Middle English fucken. Although some etymologists claim a derivation from the German ficken, the OED contends that the two words cannot be definitively related. The OED cites the earliest example of the word fuck appearing in English in 1503 in Dunbar. Be his ferris, he weighed how fuck it. I thought this would be a good place for us to begin our discussion of translation, since I have no idea what that sentence means. Following the links in the electronic version of the OED, I found out that ferris means fit to travel, nimble, vigorous. Wald means to govern. How, from howrite, is a disulfide of manganese occurring in reddish-brown crystals. And finally, fuck it, also fuck mast, fuck sail, and fuck sheet, refers to a fore or jib sail and has nothing to do with sex, at least literally. Thus, Dunbar's sentence would seem to translate into modern English as, if he is virile, he will rule with, or perhaps under, a shit-colored flag. I thought I had this completely wrong until I discovered another line of Dunbar's, which refers to so many filloch, i.e. wanton young girls, with fuck sails within this land was never heard nor seen. More conventional uses include Lindsay's 1535 bon mot, bishops may fuck their fill and be unmarried, and also from Lindsay in 1536, I fucking like a furious fornicator. So, in 1795, Dr. Johnson chose to exclude the word fuck from his dictionary. It wouldn't appear in any English dictionary until 1966. The Penguin Dictionary did it first, followed by the American Heritage Dictionary in, appropriately enough, 69. The OED finally added it along with cunt in 1972. The absence from dictionaries and most other printed media might be because in 1857, the Obscene Publications Act in England outlawed the word fuck in print, followed by, in 1873, the Comstock Mansbach Act in the United States, which outlawed the word fuck in print here. However, the word remained in common parlance, or as the OED has it, coarse speech, and writers looked for ways around the prohibition. Many, including Ernest Hemingway, denoted the word fuck and other instances of profanity with dashes, although in 1940, Papa elected to use the word muck instead of fuck in For Whom the Bell Tolls. In 1948, Norman Mailer was infamously talked into changing the word fuck to fug in The Naked and the Dead, which prompted Dorothy Parker, upon meeting him, to refer to him as, quote, the man who can't spell fuck. Tuli Kupferberg appropriated Mailer's editor's euphemism for the psychedelic band The Fugs in 1964. In 1951, James Joyce was able to use the fallout from the Fug fiasco to only cut 200 of the 250 fucks he used in From Here to Eternity and managed to snag the National Book Award. Other writers had also chosen to buck the prohibition, most famously James Joyce, who in 1922 used the word 11 times in Ulysses. In 1933, a U.S. obscenity trial declared Ulysses not obscene because it wasn't pornographic, although the trial was less about the vocabulary used in the book than what the words described. As a side note, in 1967, the filmed version, my pages are sticking together here, the filmed version of Ulysses became the first movie to say the word fuck out loud, although a character can be seen mouthing the word fuck in Sink the Bismarck in 1960. In 1928, D.H. Lawrence used the word fuck 32 times in Lady Chatterley's Lover, including the sentence, "We fucked a flame into being." In 1959, as part of a lawsuit that included Henry Miller's Tropic of Cancer and John Cleland's Fanny Hill, the novel was declared not obscene by the U.S. Court of Appeals. It was during this trial that the standard of, quote, redeeming social or literary value, unquote, was introduced. Once again, the trial had more to do with the novel's content than its vocabulary, but the floodgates were definitely opening. And in 1971, the U.S. Supreme Court declared that the mere public display of the word fuck is protected under the First and 14th Amendments. However, the restrictions remain strong in other media, particularly in radio and television. Eddie Duchin's recording of Louis Armstrong's Old Man Mose in 1938 is probably the first usage of the word fuck in popular music. In 1965, the theater critic Kenneth Tynan became the first person to say fuck on TV on the BBC. One Tory MP said Tynan should hang for it. I always thought the first person to say fuck on TV was Lenny Bruce, but I could find no proof of this online. However, sometime before 1966, i.e. when he died, he did say something along the lines of take away the right to say fuck and you take away the right to say fuck the government. I found many different wordings of this quote, probably because Bruce said it many different times. In 1972, George Carlin compiled his list of the 7 dirty words you can't say on television. In addition to fuck, there was shit, piss, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. Carlin admitted that motherfucker was redundant, being just a variation of fuck, but said it was necessary for the rhythm. In 1978, the original Battlestar Galactica coined the word frack as a substitute for fuck, which persisted into its 2003 incarnation. Although frack has its own Wikipedia and Urban Dictionary pages, it doesn't show up in any dictionaries I searched. And in 2003 on live television, Bono referred to the Golden Globe U2 won for The Hands That Built America, a song from Gangs of New York, as really, really fucking brilliant. Although a complaint was filed by the Parents Television Council, the FCC declined to fine NBC because the network did not receive advance notice of the profanity and, quote, because it was not used to refer to sexual or excretory functions, unquote, which makes me wonder just what the FCC thinks fucking is. In their official judgment, the FCC referred to what Bono said as the F word, and this incident is generally what we think led to the adoption of the 3-second delay on virtually all live broadcasts. And finally, as one final note, I will show you, apparently in China it is very common to find signs that contain the word fuck. This is because machines, when they translate this Chinese character, which I cannot say, anyone Chinese? This Chinese character means dry and dew. Some examples of the error include spread to fuck the fruit instead of loose dried fruit, and fuck to adjust the area for dry seasoning sections. Also, fuck the certain price of goods for dry foods price counter. I feel like more is being mistranslated there than perhaps just the word fuck or the word dry, but I include it. Okay, so the word fuck now leading to go the fuck to sleep. Because the book is fairly short, I wondered, if perhaps I could get one or both of you to read it. This is the entire text, so that our audience will know just what we're talking about.
Sure. Do you have? Yeah.
Or we can read
library
with pictures.
So you can see it too.
Do we have a delay? Is there a 3-second delay?
I think I've completely blown that one.
Do you want me to hold the microphone for you?
Nah, it's all right.
It's more times than I've said fuck in my entire life, I'm pretty sure.
I want to just first note that the shit that we get asked to do for this book just keeps getting weirder and weirder. All right, here we go. The book is dedicated to my daughter Vivian. without whom none of this would be possible. The cats nestle close to their kittens. The lambs have lain down with the sheep. You're cozy and warm in your bed, my dear. Please go the fuck to sleep. The windows are dark in the town, child. The whales huddle down in the deep. I'll read you one very last book if you swear you'll go the fuck to sleep. The eagles who soar through the sky are at rest, and the creatures who crawl, run, and creep. I know you're not thirsty. That's bullshit. Stop lying. Lie the fuck down, my darling, and sleep. The wind whispers soft through the grass, hun. The field mice, they make not a peep. It's been 38 minutes already. Jesus Christ, what the fuck? Go to sleep. All the kids from daycare are in dreamland. The froggy has made his last leap. Hell no, you can't go to the bathroom. You know where you can go? The fuck to sleep. The owls fly forth from the treetops. Through the air they soar and they sweep. A hot crimson rage fills my heart, love. For real, shut the fuck up and sleep. The cubs and the lions are snoring, wrapped in a big snuggly heap. How come you can do all this other great shit, but you can't lie the fuck down and sleep? The seeds slumber beneath the earth now, and the crops that the farmers will reap. No more questions. This interview's over. I've got 2 words for you, kid. Fucking sleep. The tiger reclines in the simmering jungle. The sparrow has silenced her cheep. Fuck your stuffed bear. I'm not getting you shit. Close your eyes. Cut the crap. Sleep. The flowers doze low in the meadows and high on the mountain so steep. My life is a failure. I'm a shitty-ass parent. Stop fucking with me, please, and sleep. The giant pangolins of Madagascar are snoozing as I lie here and openly weep. Sure, fine, whatever. I'll bring you some milk. Who the fuck cares? You're not gonna sleep. This room is all I can remember. The furniture crappy and cheap. You win. You escape. You run down the hall as I nod the fuck off and sleep. Bleary and dazed I awaken to find your eyes shut, so I keep my fingers crossed tight as I tiptoe away and pray that you're fucking asleep. We're finally watching our movie. Popcorn's in the microwave. Beep. Ah, shit. God damn it. You've gotta be kidding. Come on, go the fuck back to sleep. The end.
You kiss your daughter with that mouth? You kiss your daughter with that mouth?
All the time.
So, let's start with, how did you come to write this book?
Well, I have a daughter. My daughter Vivian was 2 at the time, and I sort of staggered out of her room one night after about 2 hours, bleary and confused, and went over and posted on Facebook, jokingly, be on the lookout for my forthcoming children's book, Go the Fuck to Sleep. And, I was just blowing off steam. I had no intention of writing any such book, but as soon as I wrote those words, it sort of crystallized for me, and I realized that I knew how to write that book, what it would look like, what it would sound like, the way that it would sort of create a kind of dynamic interplay between the traditional bedtime rhymes that you find in all of these children's books, which in my house anyway are very successful at getting the parents to go to sleep, less so the children, and the reality of the internal monologue, of a parent at that critical moment when you would do anything to get out of that room and enjoy the few precious moments of solitude or adult time that you might have that day. So a couple of weeks later, I sat down and actually wrote the book. And then I called Ricardo to see if he would be interested in doing some sample illustrations so that we could put a package together and approach publishers.
So you ended up with Akashic, as opposed to one of the big, mainstream houses. Would they not touch it, or did you prefer the smaller route?
We went straight to Akashic. I already knew and loved Akashic and the folks at Akashic. And I had a sense that this was a good fit for them. And I, really in general, I have so much respect for Akashic that whenever I have a project, in the hopper, my first thought is like, is this one that I could do with them? So we went straight there. It wasn't like all the big houses rejected it and then we took it to Akashic. Although I'm fairly certain that all the big houses would have rejected us had we shown it to them.
Yeah, and at the same time, Akashic had never really done a children's book before, so it was also, as much as you might have thought like, oh, this might be a good fit for them, it was kind of also like this is a weird book in the first place.
Yeah, no, it's not like they were in the business of doing obscene fake children's literature.
Yeah. So, I mean, the book became a phenom. Were you surprised? Was there a special, planning? Did you, create some wonderful viral marketing campaign to make this book become the success it did? Or do you just think that parents everywhere, were waiting for someone to say, go the fuck to sleep out loud?
The second thing you said.
The second thing. All right. So let's talk about some of the translation issues for this book, which has, come out in more than 35 languages. Starting with, I guess just basic, semantics. Have you, been asked questions? Have you been able to sort of, look and see what people are actually translating it as?
Is it okay if I don't use the microphone? Is that all right with everybody? Because my arm gets tired.
Yeah, it's...
Camera guy, you all right with that?
It's better if you use the microphone, please.
Oh, okay. I mean, to a very limited extent, of those 35 languages, I only speak 14 of them. So, no, I mean, I speak some Spanish. Ricardo speaks Spanish better than me. And I speak some Swedish. And I have family who speak Portuguese. So, I've had a rudimentary understanding on some level. And, of course, I know what the original text says, so I'm able to do some sort of, retrofit translation. But, I have learned a lot about the particulars of some of these languages. Swedish, I'd been making fun of Swedish for years because of the mildness of the language. Like the worst shit you can say in Swedish is like, the devil, like, I mean, I'm in Sweden a lot and I curse a lot and I find myself at a loss. You can call somebody a shit boot. There is a word that is equivalent to fuck literally, but it's not used as a curse. It's used to represent the act of
So when they translated, and this was the one that was actually translated by your wife, did she translate it as "go the fuck to sleep," or did she use like a sort of appropriate Swedish "go the devil to sleep"?
Right. No, it's totally idiomatic. It wouldn't make any sense to use the equivalent word to fuck. The title in Swedish is "Sov nu för fan," which means like "sleep now, god damn it." It literally means, I mean, the literal Swedish would be "sleep now, the devil."
And what about legally? Have you had any issues anywhere? People either blocking the publication of the book or censoring the cover or anything like that?
You want to?
Well, there was New Zealand. I remember. I mean, just because of the uproar of not necessarily the publication of the book, it wasn't stopped, but there were. I mean, even in the United States, there were people that were upset about it, and there was always going to be another side to. This book is not. You shouldn't be reading this book to children, and it was.
Yeah, no shit, right?
Yeah, that was the plan.
It would take such a strange mix of literacy and illiteracy to mistakenly read this book to a child. It was banned in the United Arab Emirates, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah, like the import was blocked. But I think the import of many books is routinely blocked. But in New Zealand. Yeah, it was a bestseller in New Zealand. It was very successful, but there was a group called Family First New Zealand, which attempted to get a ban going, get booksellers to remove it from their shelves, and they put out this amazing press release in which they said something like, in the hands of normal, well-adjusted parents, this book is harmless and even amusing. Like, okay, so far so good. But in the hands of aggressive, maladjusted parents, this book could pose a real risk to children. Of course, in the hands of, you know, a spoon in the hands of such parents is also a dangerous thing. They didn't get much traction with that. And actually, the reader of the Australian and New Zealand audiobook, this wonderful septuagenarian children's television performer named Noni Hazelhurst, basically battled these people into submission on our behalf. I think she debated the president of Family First New Zealand on television or something. I get the feeling he's like the president, the vice president, you know, the secretary.
So I wanted to bring Cobina into this because you actually do translate and talk about these sort of issues of translating profanity, you know, both in your work and generally.
Well, one of the things is having to do with the idiomatic language and how that translates into other languages, and the idea that what has traction or sounds profane here doesn't necessarily translate directly. So the language that I translate from into English is Indonesian, and perhaps the strongest word literally translated from Indonesian that you can use to call someone is a dog, and so that doesn't quite have the same resonance here. So that's one of the issues, is not only literally translating the words, but how does one translate the effect that one wants to give. But I want to sort of jump back for a moment and not even talk about the translation, but just this panel for a second, and the way that this panel was advertised and the title of this panel in terms of censorship, of being able to even publish the word fuck, and to point out that this panel actually is entitled "Go the F * K to sleep," and so that there's been some choice on the part of Penn not to put the whole title in there.
Is Beth here? Whose choice was that?
It's funny that. Well, I mean,
It's obscured. It's slightly obscured by the moon, as you can see, and yeah, it kind of fades into it. Yeah, the moon just happened.
you can't control where the moon is. I mean, the moon, you know. But I mean, the letters are visible if you look closely enough under the moon.
And it is there on the internal title page.
Sure.
And every subsequent page.
Right, and every subsequent page. So the fact of the matter is, in Indonesian, this book wouldn't be allowed to be published. Legally, you can't publish that kind of profanity. So, you know, it's not even a question of what my translation would be.
So early title involved dogs, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it was "Go the dog to sleep."
Go to sleep, you dog.
Go to sleep, you imperialist.
If you did translate it as Samizdat, would that be where you would go with this over and over again, calling the little girl a dog or invoking evil dogs?
It's interesting. I think my first reaction was in Indonesian would be something like, okay, just go to sleep already. And then I saw that there's been a G-rated version that's come out, which basically that's what the title is, right? Or
the title is seriously "Just Go to Sleep."
Right.
Was that your idea, or did people request that?
People requested that.
Yeah. So that they could read it to their children, or so that
Presumably.
they could put that one on the coffee table when the parents come over.
Right.
Yeah.
I just want to give an example of actually a film that's actually in general release right now called The Raid Redemption. It's playing in New York and around the country. And I don't know if has anybody seen that film or heard of it? It's a film that was made in Indonesia, and it's a martial arts film. And it's an over-the-top violent film, probably the most violent film ever made.
It's quite a statement.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen all that many violent films, but from what I've heard, it gives rated R a new meaning in terms of martial arts violent films. And so it was actually, the actors speak Indonesian and it has English subtitles. And so I went to see it really to go see what the translation was. I was interested in hearing that. And what's fascinating about this film is that moments in Indonesian or let's start with the subtitles. The subtitles will say, don't fucking move, you fuckwad, you motherfucker, you're fucking dead. And the Indonesian actor would say, please don't move, or don't you move from there, or it's just so tame in reaction, or you dog, and the English subtitle is you cunt, So it's that kind of disparity between the way the languages are used. And actually, the film was written in English first. It's the screenwriter and director is a Welsh. A man from Wales and working in Indonesia. And so he wrote the screenplay in English first and then translated into Indonesian. And the subtitles are mostly his screenplay, but just messing with a little bit so that it keeps up with the rhythm of the Indonesian.
So the harshness of the language or the vulgarity or profanity was original and was softened for the Indonesian.
But it was softened for the Indonesian because those type of words just don't exist in Indonesian. And in fact, the line where I've been dialoguing with him online, through Facebook actually, about how he came up with the script and the translation. There's the one line in English where someone's called a cunt. He had the actor in Indonesia actually called them a dog because the way the actor said the Indonesian word for dog is anjing, and the way he said it, the sort of gritting through his teeth, anjing, was so much more effective than the Indonesian word that would have been more equivalent.
And in the UK, cunt is like an everyday word that's used in a totally different way, right?
And fanny means cunt in the UK.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Everything that much more confusing. Yes.
That is confusing.
Fanny means vagina in the UK.
I'm learning so much up here.
I lived there for 3 years and got caught on that more than once. So did you get funny queries about what exactly does go the fuck to sleep mean? I mean, go the fuck, the fuck, and how to translate that from people? Like what was the sentiment you were expressing?
No.
So the whole reason why I'm here is so this is my first book in English, in American English, called Fucking Martin, and it was quote translated unquote into British English as, if you can see it, Fucking Martin, which was entirely not my idea. But there is a chapter in the book called Fucking Martin, and when the book was translated, I would get all of these query letters from various translators saying that you can't make a gerund from the word fuck in German or Dutch or Japanese or whatever it was.
I wanted to help you out, Dale, because you mistakenly said that in American English it was Martin and John.
Martin and John.
You said it wrong. I want to clarify for everybody so they know what the fuck you're talking about.
Martin and John's the first one. Fucking Martin was the English, translate the British English translation of it. So I would receive all these queries saying we can't call it Fucking Martin. We can either call it having sex with Martin or Martin the asshole, and you have to pick. And I just wondered if there were any issues like that where you couldn't translate the sort of multiple layers of meaning that fuck carries in this country. If anyone asked you if you had a preference.
I think my memory is, first of all, blurry because I was doing 8 hours of media every day for this book for months on end. But I think we were pretty shielded from the translation process. I remember that there were a couple of deals, specifically Korea, South Korea, obviously, I suppose. The North Korean version is still forthcoming, where the deal sort of got held up. Publishers were like, we want to do the book, we're going to make an offer, but give us a couple of days to figure out what the idiomatic translation will be, and we'll be right back to you. That right? I think Johnny Temple, publisher of Akashic, I'm looking for approval, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think they were hung up on the word. My recollection is that they were hung up on the word fuck. Our agents were saying to us that we got a lot of interested publishers, but no one's going to make an offer until they figure out how to translate the word fuck.
Right.
And then 3 days later, they figured it out.
Right.
4 offers on the table.
Right. Yeah. It was like they had split the atom or something. It's like this had never come up before in the history of Korean publishing.
Yeah, we were shielded from the translations because it wouldn't have meant much to us if all these versions came in. But they did. Johnny would send them to us occasionally, and we would flip through them. There was one I was looking through. I was speaking with Johan about this. It might have been a Spanish version, but I speak some Spanish, so it could have been something else. But the beep at the end when the microwave goes off, beep. I remember it being like a French version. I was like, oh, I wonder how they look up beep. You know, and I looked at the page, and there was no beep at all. And I was like, what does that mean? So I did a Google translation. It was very different. And Johan was telling me that actually there was a query about that. They asked, and they said, oh yeah, microwave popcorn. Parents don't do that here. No one would understand it.
Right.
So we're going to flip to something totally different.
Now that I think about it too, I've noticed that in the Italian edition, I think the rhyme scheme is actually different. You know, this is an A, B, C, B, right? Is that what it is? Yeah, an A, B, C, B rhyme scheme. And in Italian, I believe it's A, B, B, which is totally different. And I don't give a fuck. I mean, they can do whatever they want. But now that I think about it, that comes to mind.
And when the book appeared, how did people talk about it, especially, in FCC or, other country equivalents media? What were the various ways around it or euphemisms or lack thereof?
Based on the media that I did, my general impression is that it didn't cause much of an uproar. In the sense that, and also based on sort of the online discussion. I mean, a lot of the discussion of the book internationally, in English anyway, takes place on the book's Facebook page. A lot of Australians on there and stuff. I think essentially that this country is more hysterical than many when it comes to profanity, so it was sort of less of an issue. It wasn't. There was nothing to get riled up about. No local versions of the FCC were.
So all the newspapers called it "Go the fuck to sleep," no asterisks, unlike the Penn program.
That's my.
Really? I would think that.
Oh, you mean in other countries?
In print, like if the Times put it out, they would.
No, in this country, sure.
Right.
Nobody wrote fuck. No.
Nobody wrote fuck.
No, it was interesting too because I'd do radio, and there'd always be a discussion of how to say it. And some people said, go the F to sleep. Some people said, go the bleep to sleep. It was always a discussion, and different levels of broadcast media had different standards that they applied. Certainly in print, nobody in this country, aside from, your hipper, less mainstream publications, spelled it out. The Times, the various bestseller lists, I think the convention was always an F with a what is it called? Not an M dash, but a...
Underscore.
Underscore.
An underscore.
I think that became the convention.
To the K or?
No, just F.
F.
Long underscore.
So
yeah.
You definitely have to think about it, what it was.
Yeah, I mean, our first huge piece of mainstream media, when the book first came out, there was actually a couple months before the book, when the book was first people became aware of this book. There was actually months before there was an actual print book in publication. It kind of caught us off guard. So it took a couple months before we really started doing real media. And the first big piece was Good Morning America, right? Was it with Matt Lauer?
Oh, Today's Show.
Today's Show. I'm sorry, Today's Show, which is very mainstream, and they try to pick mostly like upbeat stories. And to hear Matt Lauer on what did he say? Because I remember just saying look, I was in the green room, and I'm looking at Matt Lauer, and I'm like, I can't believe Matt Lauer just said. Go the F on morning.
What did he say? I think he said F. I didn't think Matt Lauer said go the F. But I remember that, there was a lot of hesitance. There was a process as the book got rolled out. Yeah, so I gave a reading of the book in April at a museum in Philadelphia. At that time, the book was supposed to come out in October, and then the book crazily caught fire, and the viral thing happened, and we rushed it out for June. But there was this process along the way where I remember being very aware, and the conversations that Ricardo and Johnny and I had were about the way in which increasingly mainstream media was giving us coverage, and in so doing giving us cover and giving us legitimacy so that we could kind of climb the ladder in a sense, So getting on the Today Show was obviously sort of a huge coup and a crazy thing, and the last thing I ever thought I'd be doing for this or any of my books. But it sort of had to be grounded in other media that let them understand that it was okay and that this was big enough or mainstream enough or acceptable enough. And when when they in turn had me on there, it sort of gave everybody else permission to open the floodgates. But there was a Good Morning. It was the Today Show's blog did a really early piece, and then the New Yorker picked it up, and the Times book blog picked it up, and there was this real sort of gradual inculcation process around the profanity, but just around the topic in general.
Yeah, to the point that that it seemed like no one, not that no one noticed that this word, this four-letter word, was everywhere, but it had been so much everywhere that it was like, yeah, people had been immunized to it to a certain degree.
Speaking of which, I using the wonderful resource of Wikipedia, discovered that Eric Metaxas, who also wrote a children's book called "It's Time to Sleep, My Love," said, "I really have a number of feelings about this because to me it's about the mainstreaming of vulgarity in American culture. It's funny, but it's just wrong. Innocence is constantly punctured, lampooned, and when you have something really, really beautiful like a lullaby for children, there's something that kind of saddens me that we have to turn it into a joke." Do you have any feelings about that?
Do you have any feelings about that?
Well, one of the things about that is that, do you completely forget that most children's lullabies are really frightening and harsh? And so that the idea that children lullabies, they basically are saying, go the fuck to sleep, or something terrible is going to happen to you. So that's an interesting argument. I mean, there are sorts of things that, that happen on family television. I just want to read something that comes from Dancing with the Stars, which I'm assuming is a family show, not one that I watch, but the host, Tom Bergeron, recently, this is from an article online from Entertainment Weekly. They had this group, LMFAO, performed. Mm-hmm. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that group, but after that group performed, Tom Bergeron, the host, said, okay, because one of the judges got on the table and started to dance, he said, and that was with dancing assist from Bruno WTF Tonioli. And he got censored for that on the West Coast when it was rebroadcast 3 hours later. So he was censored
for saying WTF.
Right, and he said...
Does anyone need to know what WTF or LMFAO?
Well, so he said, his...
World Trade Federation.
Right.
Yes.
His response was, you can't say WTF on television? Really, I replied, do you know what LMFAO stands for, right? And so for those of you who don't know, LMFAO means laughing my fucking ass off. And so WTF means, what the fuck? And so the fact that these initials are being censored now between the East Coast and the West Coast
It is, I think, one of the funny things about when you censor it, actually, when I just got the OED, which is why I spent so much time going through it, and they said that, one of the original euphemisms in print was EFF, but they said that basically EFF just came to mean fuck, and essentially it was sort of pointless because it made you think the word. It didn't act, it pointed your mind toward almost more completely than if it just appeared and then disappeared in front of your face because it made you think about it. And it's literally sort of the same thing every time you see an F * K or an F dash or something like that. You actually stop and think the word fuck as opposed to just glancing over it because, unless you're living, in an Amish community, you probably hear the word fuck, hundreds of times a day, and, it doesn't make that much of an impression, and it ends up making more of an impression when someone half conceals it from you. I have a friend who has a very, very vulgar mouth, but she cannot say the word cunt, but she will say see you next Tuesday, but she says it all the time, which makes you think of the word that much more often. And finally we're like, just say it already. It's obviously on your mind. Just let it out.
Well, it's interesting as that being kind of a translation within English of, saying the word, not saying the word. It reminds me also of the play that was on Broadway last year, The Motherfucker with a Hat, that was, variously changed to the mother F line with a hat, and then finally, I think it was the Tony Committee finally decided, well, we'll refer to it as the mother with the hat, which of course completely changes the meaning.
It's a different
play.
Of the
title.
That's a Tyler Perry play. In terms of Eric Metaxas, his comment was made in the context of him claiming spuriously and self-servingly that "Go the Fuck to Sleep" was a parody of his book, which it's not. And his argument was basically that we both rhyme sleep with deep, and that we both have like some tigers in the book. It's like, really, Eric Metaxas?
They're pretty tigers, by the way.
Yeah, they're great. And also, was fascinating also because it seemed to misunderstand the very notion of parody. Like, if you're parodying something, you have no investment in pretending that you're not, because without knowledge of the original, the parody makes no sense. So were I parodying his stupid ass book, it would behoove me to say so. So it was very silly on a number of levels. That's all I have to say about him.
But yeah, and precisely I didn't totally remember the quote, but things that are precious and innocent and the things that are meant to be untouched. I mean, those are usually the most fun things to eventually rip apart and take apart and make over, right?
Usually, yes.
That's why we're doing it.
What are you going to say?
Well, no, I mean, and also this is, to belabor the point of it, this book is for grown-ups, right? Like, we're clear on that. Like, and it's not cute when kids swear. It's actually like pretty terrible. And if that were what Eric Metaxas was getting at, I would agree. Like, on the couple of occasions where my daughter has let something slip, I'm horrified, and I don't want that to happen. And you hear kids on the playground and stuff cursing, and it's a bad look. Which is why we wrote a book for grown-ups.
What age can kids start swearing?
As the foremost expert in the country on child obscenity rules, I'm going to say, well, it's different on different coasts. But in the
southern coast being 97.
I would say in the flyover states you're looking at 12 and a half. On the West Coast, 11, and in New York, 10.
Yeah, there was a big furor. Actually, did anyone see the movie Kick-Ass?
Sure.
And was it Chloe Moretz, who was about 8 or 9, and she plays a little superhero with an incredibly foul mouth. And there was sort of an outcry that the actress had been asked to say these words. It was, obviously many people, of course, said the language was inappropriate to be depicted that way. But then just the fact that people had sort of taught this little girl these words because she was like, "I'm gonna kick your fucking ass, bitch," which coming out of a 7 or 8 year old's mouth, I have to confess, I thought was really funny. And but I don't have children, so I think it's very cute when children curse.
I mean, that was to me the least of that movie's problems.
Yeah, well, that's another story. So, because this is an educational panel today, we've learned that in Indonesia the worst thing you can call someone is a dog. In Sweden, the worst thing you can say is "go to hell." I know that in the UK they're more obsessed with ass, and we're more obsessed with the front genitals. In Germany, it's shit. I wonder if you've encountered. Oh, and in Russia, apparently it's whores and sons of whores. And Covina's mother said something in Hebrew.
In Hebrew, it's "go to hell."
Go to hell again. In Arabic, it's your mother's or your sister's cunt. Any other worst possible things to say in various languages for our well-traveled audience, just in case they need to really insult someone in another country?
Well, I can add something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, after this, we're going to open it up for questions.
I thought you had a foreign obscenity for us.
Yes.
Oh.
Can I ask, because we're recording this event, can I ask that you go to the microphone so it will capture your question on the audio, so when people stream it, they'll hear it?
While you're getting to the microphone, I'll just fill in the space by saying, between French and French Canadian, there's a difference in terms of where the swears go. And in French Canadian, it's having to do with issues with the church. So tabernacle is the worst that you could do in Quebec. But in France itself has more to do with whores and kind of thing. So.
Well, the tabernacle quote has something to do with in Spanish in Spain in particular. Blasphemy is really the way to go. And people in Spain get very frustrated with the fact that so much cursing in English revolves around fuck. And the range is very short. And so you would say things like, "I shit on the host" in Spain, or, I'm trying to think of more, but I wonder if you say you were shielded from the translation, but did anyone say that to you? Like, well, I'd rather be using a broader range of bad words?
It's a funny question. I can just imagine our people calling up. We have other bad words we want to use.
Yeah, no.
Unshackle us. Yeah. I mean, I think for the most part, the translators did what they wanted to do without having to run it by us for the most part, or at the very least, they didn't run it by us.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally we get a book in the mail, like a new edition with I just received, I guess, the Turkish version. It's very cool. Very cool to see all these different covers, but I can't really, neither of us can read much of what's going on inside.
Also, a lot of these versions are still forthcoming. I'd say about half of them maybe have come out. A lot of the Asian ones particularly are not out. To me, Italian is maybe the best language to curse in. I spent some time in Italy, and I was there on a book tour, and I was traveling with my editor. We were getting on a train to go from Milano to Rome, and she ran into her ex-boyfriend's brother on the train. And there was no love lost between the two of them. And the volley and the volume and the vociferous nature and the beauty, the absolute visceral joy of listening to her scream at this dude was amazing. It took our relationship to a whole other level. I mean, oh my God. I only understood like a third of it, but it was great. I just want to learn how to curse in Italian.
Mm-hmm. May I ask one other question for Cobina?
Yeah.
Is there really no way at all of saying anything less mild? And I mean, there's not an underworld where people...
Definitely there are words that we can find equivalents between English and an Indonesian that mean, fuck, cunt, shit, whatever. But the fact of the matter is when you call someone a dog, it has a force behind it. So the literal translation of that, or another one is, literally translate as bedbug. I mean, so that doesn't have the same force in English.
It might in New York.
That is a lot worse.
In New York, I bet it would carry a big weight right now.
But actually, the word fuck is used by the young people in Indonesia now. I mean, it's not an unknown
English word fuck?
Yeah, the English word fuck, So it's become an international
No,
curse
that's what Swedes do too, is because of the paucity of good curse words in their language, they curse in English. It's hilarious.
I'm going to ask a question I think is probably purely rhetorical, but do you think that there is any relationship between the sort of wealth of profanity available in a given language and corresponding cultural norms? Are cultures that are more vulgar verbally also more vulgar or violent or sexual or whatever as well?
I was waiting for the part where we get to generalize blindly about world cultures.
So let's just grab it out, anyone's experience.
Let me rank the top 10 worst cultures in the...
Excellent.
I have no idea.
So, despite the fact that the book is called Go the Fuck to Sleep, you can be excellent. Any other questions from the audience? Please come up to the microphone if you would. Or there's a microphone right there as well.
This isn't really a question, but one of the great heroes of free speech and literature, Barney Rossett, publisher of Grove Press and Evergreen Review, died a few months ago. And this Monday evening, there will be a memorial service for him in the Great Hall across the street. He's the man who fought the Lady Chatterley ban in this country and published so many great authors in the 1950s and 60s, and I don't know if he's still remembered in quite the way he should be, but it's going to be at 5:30 in the Great Hall if anybody is interested in honoring Barney Rossett.
What was the day again, the date?
Monday, this coming Monday, the 9th.
Thanks. He's definitely remembered in the theater world because he was a great publisher of plays.
Is there somewhere that folks can look up, like online to find this information when they forget it?
I would guess, but don't know, that Grove Press might have an announcement of it.
Great. Other questions? Comments?
That reminded me. You mentioned earlier the Joyce obscenity trial, and I had a quick story about it, which is that my grandfather was a young attorney working at the firm that defended Joyce in the trial in what was the year? It was
33.
33, and he has a lot of memories of it. He had to prepare a brief, which was never entered into evidence, so there's no record of his having participated, but he did. And he remembers that his firm's strategy was to pack the courtroom with women, because the thinking was that if the jury saw that these women, these delicate creatures, would not swoon and pass out when these obscene passages were read, then how problematic could it be?
I think I can't remember if it was now with Ulysses or with Lady Chatterley's Lover, Tropic of Cancer, and Fanny Price. But a senator actually threatened to read the obscene passages out loud on the floor of the Senate, but actually chickened out because he was too embarrassed by them to do so.
Yeah, it's a kind of a question. When comic strips curse, they have like swirling planets and things. Has there ever been like a rebus for that, or is it just random when they put those like crazy little swirls?
I wonder that a lot myself. Sometimes, even like when I'm corresponding with people about this book, sometimes I feel like I should be considerate and not say fuck in the email. Or sometimes I even just think I don't want to get caught by a spam filter, so I'll do something else. And then I'm like, wait, so what? How do you spell fuck again with asterisks? Is it an asterisk with an ampersand? Like, I'm trying to remember. Just make it up, I guess.
Yeah. I also am sometimes, particularly at, around my daughter's preschool, I try to be very like low key. I don't really tell people that much about the book. I mean, eventually they find out, but I try. It's sort of a bad look to be the guy at the preschool who wrote "Go the fuck to sleep." She goes to a Waldorf school. There's like a lot of wood blocks and shit, and they don't teach you to read until you're like 14, and so and like the teachers are like these. They like their feet like barely touch the ground when they walk, and they like lick the dew off of flowers and stuff. So like I feel a little uncomfortable, particularly in that setting, being this guy.
I actually have a question about that, because a couple weeks ago this new version came out, the G-rated version of the book, and I'm wondering, did you write this, or this translation, was this written by you, and was this a result of having the preschool experience now?
It was actually written by Elmo, the puppet on Sesame Street. No, it was. I did write it. We got a lot of feedback from fans of the book who said, I read this to my kids and I edit it as I go. And we were like, well, you're probably fucking up the meter then, So like, and Ricardo brilliantly, presciently did the original illustrations at a much bigger size, so we could do that book, which is much bigger, at a proper sort of kids book size, and there's all kinds of extra goodies and sort of remixed elements in those illustrations. But yeah, it came from a lot of readers essentially saying they wanted to let their kids in on the fun, or that they already had, and that the kids really liked the book, even stripped of the profanity, that they kind of recognized themselves in this mischievous character. So we were like, all right, well, we'll throw it out there, and it'll be sort of a companion volume.
Yeah, even Johnny Temple, our publisher, has two children who a little older than Adam's daughter, so probably a little more aware of what was going on. And when this book was first blowing up last summer or whenever, they're kind of aware there's this book. Like, what's this book that Dad that you keep talking about? And he didn't want to read it to him, so he would when he finally did read it to him, he would change the words around. So. And
which one is selling better now?
Obviously,
okay.
That book is very much a companion volume. But it's funny, when word of that book started to get out, there were people who were like indignant, who were like, you're censoring the book, and it's like, right, yeah, we belatedly became so offended by our own book that we are pulling it from the market and replacing it with a sanitized version. That's what that's not what's happening here. But it's funny, when you introduce an idea like that, like a G-rated version, there is almost a knee-jerk reaction from some people. So you get it from all sides.
Well, it is a translation. And so the issues you went through in terms of getting the right words in the meter would be similar, I'd imagine, to what someone's a translator into another language, because that G-rated language is another language. Did the book have the same feeling to it? Even though, what country was it that doesn't have microwave popcorn? That was taken
France.
out.
I think it was France. I don't remember, but yeah.
But did you change? Did you change any of the essential examples or the idea of the book in order to make it G-rated, or was it a translation of the?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. There is a translation a translational element to that, and there are things that got shaded a little differently that changed shape and changed meaning in more subtle ways, certainly. I'm trying to think of an example. There's in here, I think, my life is a failure, I'm a shitty ass parent, in some cases you're just swapping out a word and the sentiment remains more or less the same, if less, harsh. But in a case like that, the obscenity is really fundamentally part of the sentiment, and you have to figure out how it works. And yeah, things do sort of, shift and change. So yeah, there is that element, definitely.
Well, as a parent, you don't want to admit to your child that you're a shitty-ass parent, right?
Right, yeah, there's that as well.
I'm just curious, how did you deal with that particular...
I think that line became something like, my life is absurd, this is taking forever. Unless that's a different line. I'm trying to... I don't know.
Have you read the new version to Vivian?
Yeah, I do read the new version of Vivian. Vivian is a fan of the new version. Vivian is in fact, Ricardo works some illustrations. This is Vivian on the first page here. That's her. And also, actually, Ricardo and I had a shorthand for each page. We'd be like on the phone talking about each page. So, like Bed Boy and, Pangolin Girl. And this page was known as Black Vivian because it's based on an illustration or a photograph of Vivian also. So this consistently has remained her favorite page, like when the book is lying around. I mean, like at other people's houses, because I don't leave it lying around. She'll always open to this page and be like, Black Vivian, Black Vivian.
Question?
I first heard or saw this book or read it when it was online. Why did you release it online, and was that intentional to stir up business, or did it just leak?
It was at first, what started spreading around was the title of the book, and we didn't have an online presence, so there was just actually one advance order on Amazon, and it started creeping up very rapidly, and we were so astounded that this book was number 6 on all of Amazon.com, and then number 1. And again, the book hadn't come out yet, and we were really just sitting there thinking to ourselves, like, whoa, the worst thing would happen now would be the book to come out online, a PDF that you saw, and it did, and we were like, oh man, there was like maybe a day, I don't know, maybe it was only an hour. We were a little deflated because it was not intentional at all. It was a PDF that had gone out to one of our booksellers or someone that had passed it on. And we thought that kind of sunk it before it even had left the port. But it actually, as you saw it and maybe sent it to a friend, it really increased people's interest in it.
Yeah, we were initially terrified. This was our nightmare, and it happened, and we were doing, for like a week, we were doing all of these cease and desist orders, trying to get it down, and of course you cannot cease and desist the internet. Like, the internet does not listen to those type of requests. And we were really, really concerned. And in retrospect, it certainly did help. It allowed people to see whether the book delivered on the sort of promise of its premise, the one image they had on Amazon, the one verse they had on Amazon. And it made people, I think, critically feel like a part of the process. It made people feel like they had discovered it and could help disseminate it. And I think for me, the turning point was a lot of the traffic was leading toward the Facebook page of a woman in Australia who had posted the entire book as an album on Facebook. And I wrote her this very polite email where I was like, look, I'm glad you like the book so much. I appreciate it. But, the book isn't even out yet. And we'd appreciate it if you take down the album because, we'd like to sell some copies. And I'll send you a free autographed copy when it comes out. And she emailed me back and was like, I'd be happy to take it down, but I'd like to tell you that I've gotten 500 requests in the last 24 hours from people asking where they can buy the book, and I'm sending them all to Amazon. And I was like, okay, forget it then. That's cool, But, I hesitate to be sort of too romantic about piracy and about sort of open source stuff because this was a very particular kind of case. I mean, it's a gift book, essentially, and it's an art object, thanks to Ricardo's beautiful art. And, it's bad form to show up at a baby shower with a printed out, low resolution, stapled together PDF of a book that you printed off the internet and be like, congratulations, this is such a wonderful time in your life. You know, that's not socially acceptable. So, you know, it's a little tricky. But no, I'd love to say that we were like these viral marketing geniuses, but it was not just an accident, but initially a calamity.
I think it's, you know, somewhat analogous to 50 Shades of Grey, which also was widely available before it came out. I actually wonder if there, you know, is somehow some, you know, Benjamin notion of authenticity that attaches to a published book that doesn't attach to the electronic version or a PDF or, you know, electronic version. Because, I mean, 50 Shades of Grey was available for, I think, well over a year in various formats for free before it was ever published. And it, you know, still went to the top of the New York Times bestseller list, you know, despite the fact that any number, you know, millions of people had probably seen, you know, all or part of it before. So I wonder, and I mean, I think especially with the picture book, the idea for something tactile must be, you know, it's just, I have, you know, a PDF, not one that I stole, but one that was sent to me. That is very gorgeous, but still, it's just not as pretty as the book. Has the ebook sold well?
It has, yeah. Surprisingly, it has. I mean, I've never quite understood why anyone would buy the ebook. But yeah, it's
especially on Kindle. It's
right.
sold on the Kindle, which is a black and white format of like on a screen this big. It's like, who's reading this book on a Kindle?
Yeah,
strange.
But it has, weirdly enough.
I actually have a question now about the adaptation to film, or that is being.
Yeah, you and me both.
Oh, okay. Are you going to be writing that? Are you going to be illustrating that? Is it going to? I mean, are you doing the animation for it?
Is it full length?
It's a live action film, so it's not an animated film or anything like that.
Live action.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was the film rights were bought by Fox 2000, and it's being written by Shauna Cross, who just wrote the adaptation of What to Expect When You're Expecting, which hits theaters in a couple of weeks. She's like Hollywood's go-to screenwriter for unadaptable baby-related books, apparently. I met with her. She's really cool. I have very little of an idea of what the adaptation will be. But that's
Is she planning
fine.
to write a 90-minute, 100-minute
Yeah,
screenplay?
it's a feature film, yeah.
Aliens. There's an alien in it, right?
Think so? Yeah, there
was
better
rumors
be.
on the blog I saw.
Okay.
And do you know, I mean, is the adaptation of a parent dealing with getting their child to go the fuck to sleep, or is it about the content of the book?
No, I mean, it's, I think it's, I mean, I think really what they sort of bought is the title and the concept and the, you know, the energy associated with the book. You know, obviously there's no narrative here really to be adapted, at least not at a 90-minute level.
Although it probably takes about that long for Vivian to go to sleep.
Sure, yeah. You could just put a webcam in my bedroom at night, yeah.
Are there any other